Hey there, folks. Uncle Troy here with a C-word update. This is my little side blog where I keep track of all the cancer-related things so I don't mess up the main blog. So if you're looking for one of the happy-go-lucky fun and games videos, you can click away and I won't be offended. If you want to stick around, though, that's what we're here for. I just got back from the doctor today. I visited the surgeon. And the surgeon's the one that basically cut slots in my ass. To explain in a little more detail, back last summer, summer 2013, not too long after I started getting chemotherapy, I started having pains in my butt, and which were not in the area of the tumor itself. And it's kind of hard to explain where it is without getting too graphic. Short version is there's parts of your butt that are purely decorative, and there are parts of your butt which are load-bearing, and this is one of the load-bearing parts of my butt. Became sensitive, sore, tender, and when I'd sit down it would hurt, and sometimes it would hurt, sometimes it wouldn't, which of course was always a surprise, because you sit down a couple times, it doesn't hurt, and you forget, and you just plop down in the chair, and that's the time it hurts so bad it actually caused you to lose bladder control for a few seconds, which happened. And I brought that to the attention of my doctor I was seeing for the chemotherapy, and didn't seem to think it was related to the cancer. Not that it couldn't be related to the cancer, because chemotherapy affects the whole body, but didn't seem to be directly affected with the cancer and not immediately life-threatening, and they didn't know what it was, so they basically gave me some pain pills and turned me loose. And as I've told before, it reached the point where it was hurting so bad it was affecting my health. I mean, I couldn't sit, couldn't stand, couldn't lay. It was just a constant murderous pain. I joked very early on that it felt like sitting on a railroad spike. And later it became obvious that that was an understatement. At the time I said that, it was just hurting a little, compared to what it would hurt later. They talk about pain scales hurting on a scale of 1 to 10. Well, this thing gave me a new 10 every so often. So as I've explained before, I went to the emergency room with it. And once they got me to quit peeing and puking and pooping in their rooms, they, considered it, okay, he's not dying right now, let's send him home. So they poked at it a little, sent me home, and then a couple days later I had a scheduled chemotherapy session, which I called and say, I feel too bad, I can't have chemotherapy this week. So they had me come in anyway so the doctor could poke at me, and whatever it was doing it while I was at a doctor, and said, well, we need to get him in the hospital, and who's your surgeon? And I'd had a surgeon put in my port, and so I suggested that one. They said, oh, he's a good guy, we'll get him in here. And it turned out I had what was called an anal abscess, or para-anal abscess, something like that. But what it basically is there was an infection or something inside the structure of my butt, probably unrelated to the cancer, but the cancer and my general health and the chemotherapy all could have affected it. So there's no really telling what caused it and what made it worse. Just, there's all those things. And excuse me a moment. Just making sure my nose wasn't bleeding. That's another thing I got to tell you about here in a minute. But anyway, it had developed an infection or something, and it built up some fluid. And so, not having anywhere to go, it made its own hole. And unfortunately, the hole wasn't sufficient, and so it swelled up, and so my butt swelled up. And the only treatment for that, by the time we reached that point, they gave me antibiotics for several days in a row in the hospital, hoping to bring the infection down and the swelling down. And that didn't happen, or at least not good enough to what we wanted. So the surgeon had to go in and make a couple of slits in my butt, where he dug down where the infection was and could scrape everything out. Debriding is what they call it. And scraped everything out. And packed me full of gauze, put me on antibiotics for a few more days. And I was in the hospital for like 8 days total. And next time I'm in the hospital that long, just sneak in and shoot me, okay? Because that was the lowest health-wise I think I've ever been. And being in a hospital doesn't help. And of course, in my mind, it's not that I was infected and had an abscess and whatnot. It's just being in the hospital for 8 days made me that sick. Is how it feels. Excuse me a moment. By the way, today I'm having a delicious shamrock shake from McDonald's, available for a limited time only. They taste kind of weird and they look weirder, and in this video camera they look real weird. But it's pretty good, so give it a try. Okay, so where was I? Oh yeah. So they made these slits in my butt, dug in and debrided all the infected tissue, and basically wrapped me up, sent me home to heal. And the doctor talked about drainage, and that was in August of 2013, and now we're here in February of 2014, and I'm still going to see that doctor because the slits have still not healed up and are still draining. And some days they hurt, some days they just drain, some days they're fine. But the reason why I don't spend a lot of time sitting at the computer, and why a lot of these C-word updates and my video logs and other videos are have me laid out in bed or in repose, as one subscriber put it, is because I can't always sit, because this is a load-bearing part of my butt, which has the slits. And so some days I can sit, some days I can't. I've been sitting pretty much all day today because of the doctor's appointment and driving back and forth into town and stopping and eating. We ate at a real restaurant. We just stopped later to pick up one of these shamrock shakes because I needed something sweet for afterwards, and it looked good there on the menu board. But apparently this is going to be the way I am from now on. They were hoping it would heal up by itself, or that it would get bad enough that we were forced to go in and have another operation. But it's not healing up. In fact, it's unchanged since the last time I saw it. And part of that is that this is a part of the body that doesn't heal very fast anyway. And part of it is that I'm generally not in good health, diabetic, whatever. But a lot of it has to do with the chemotherapy. Chemotherapy brings you down and makes you slow to heal anyway. And one of the drugs I'm on, Avastin, specifically prevents the growth of new tissues, new blood vessels, slows down the healing quite a bit. And that's because the same mechanism your body uses to heal is the mechanism cancer hijacks to grow new tissue that it doesn't need, and grow blood vessels to the new tissue to provide nutrients. So I have to stay on that medicine, which also means I heal slower. And another side effect of Avastin is nosebleeds. And I'd managed to hide that from my family mostly, but my mother took me to the doctor today, and we stopped at a restaurant to eat, and every time I eat, and this has been my entire life, I think handed down from my grandfather through genetics, is every time I eat, my nose runs a little. So I have to dab at it or blow my nose. So I started eating at the restaurant and felt a little something running, and dab, and then blow my nose, and I looked over and noticed my mother's eyes were about yay big. And apparently I had started bleeding out my nose, which I do occasionally, just a couple times a week. Just my nose bleeds a drop or two. Some capillary in there is burst and takes a second or two to heal. And I had not done that in front of my mother before, so she was a little concerned about it. But it's not life-threatening. It's not like I'm going to have a gusher and bleed out. It's just a few drops here and there. Your nose mucous membranes especially are constantly, in a state of flux, and they're constantly renewing themselves. That's one of the ways that you have anything exposed to the air is constantly renewing itself. Skin flakes are constantly growing and flaking off. Your nose has blood vessels and whatnot because there are a lot of important tissues up in there. Your scent glands or sensing organs, however you say that, nasal passages and whatnot. And those are subject to nosebleeds, and the Avastin makes you more sensitive to nosebleeds. So I have nosebleeds occasionally. And like I said, that's the first time I'd done that right in front of my mother. I told her about it. Warned all the family, if I have a little blood coming out of my nose, that's normal, that's fine. But it's the first time I'd actually done it in front of her, and it kind of scared her. So I apologize for that, Mom. Sorry to scare you. But that's just another thing I'm going to have to put up with. So anyway, I said I went to the doctor today, and I'm not exactly healing, but I'm not getting any worse. I'm continuing with the chemotherapy. In fact, tomorrow I'm going in for another round of chemotherapy. They've still stopped the drug that was making my hands and fingers go numb. It's not gotten any better, but it's not gotten any worse either. And I swear my voice was a lot stronger right before I started. It's just as soon as I start recording, all of a sudden I go hoarse and gravelly. But anyway, so the chemotherapy continues. My butt drains and hurts sometimes. In fact, that's the number one symptom I've got right now of all this is, little pain in the butt every now and again. And the nosebleeds continue, the chemotherapy continues. But because tomorrow is the day I start my chemotherapy back, today I feel pretty good. In fact, I feel about as good as I'm going to ever feel. Because by definition, the day before I start chemo is the day I start feeling great and feeling like I could go back to work and feeling like everything's going to be great. And then I start the chemo and I start feeling bad again. So remind me when I'm in the middle of the chemotherapy that, it does wear off and I do feel good after a while. Okay, I think that's about all I got to talk about this week. This is Uncle Troy signing out. Please have a good night.